Hey there, welcome to the Mental Perk podcast. I'm Carla Hutcherson, licensed professional counselor.
And I'm Brandy Mock, entrepreneur, author, and community leader. And we're here to talk about
real people, real issues, and real talk.
Welcome back to the show. We are so excited to have Dr. Brown here with us. He's a Harvard grad, and he also is the owner and president of Centerpoint, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Good to be here.
You guys will get to see him, but he's a Texan by heart.
That's right.
Here.
He's a handsome cowboy.
Local.
He is local. So talk to us a little bit about what you do and who you are and Centerpoint and what got you where you're at, because you're a little bit of everything right now. You're a speaker. What else do we do?
I when I was looking you up, I found out that number one, you used to be a high school principal. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So I'm interested about how you got from there to where you are now, and then how you're integrating these horses in there.
Yeah.
I tell you, it's been quite a trajectory, and it's great to be here. Thanks for having me and to talk to fellow Texans too. It's great. Yeah. You know, I grew up here in this area. When I was 12 years old, I got into horses. I was working horse ranches in northern Fort Worth, just east of the stockyards.
Wow.
And at that time, I was also a basketball player, but I began to kind of see there was a lot of leadership development that occurred through horsemanship. Yeah. Things happened. I went to college, went to University of Miami for undergrad. And at that time, 9/11 occurs when I'm in Mexico City doing a study abroad program.
Oh, my goodness.
So I got to see those towers come down as an international exchange student studying with Mexican students at a university.
Wow.
And I called my grandfather. He was Tuskegee Airman back in World War II. And I said, I'm going in. I'm going to join the Marine Corps. And he said, I was hoping Air Force, because I'm an Air Force guy. But that'll do,
But you went and picked the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. I wanted to kind of go ground. Leadership's always been kind of a passion and a calling of mine. I got a chance when I graduated to join Marine Corps and then lead an infantry platoon in Iraq. And when I came home, I realized, I want to kind of get into building things and into construction of things that really help make people's lives better. Service is a powerful thing. There's lots of ways to serve. And I said, education's the route I want to go. And I saw so many kind of through lines between leadership and education, even looking at it from an infantry lens, because at the end of the day, leadership gives you skills and tools to navigate complexity. And so becoming an educator helped me kind of see how it lives inside the classroom. I started as a teacher. I taught 4th, 5th, and 6th grade in South Korea for several years.
Wow.
And I sure did. And then from there, my wife and I spent our very first year of our marriage at Harvard, where we celebrated Harvard's 375th birthday.
Wow.
And then accepted a job to go work with the Walt Disney Company in China. And we went there and helped to develop learning centers for a few years.
So you've been all over.
So we got a chance to kind of have some global experiences, and that kind of leads me to where kind of at a point now synthesizing all these lessons. Yeah. And that's what the Centerpoint method is about, an experiential, hands-on leadership development system where you can take leadership theory and apply it to practice through the adaptive relational leadership that you see through horsemanship inside the 50-foot round pen and beyond.
Wow.
So who comes to Centerpoint and who are you teaching these skills?
Right now, we're focused on international. And so we were just talking, my wife and I, we're going to be doing a speech at University of Gondar in Ethiopia. It'll be virtual for this speech, and then we'll start talking about going over. My goal is to start building horse ranches across Africa and different parts of the Middle East so that we can have development centers where we can take the theory of leadership and actually see how it lives through practice. And so there are lots of places around the world who are having an interest in this type of experiential learning, and we're exploring those opportunities.
Wow. So horses are really amazing animals because they really connect with human beings.
That's right.
And as a therapist, there's a lot of research that goes around equine therapy, and just using horses to help people heal.
Sure.
But now you're using them in a totally different way. How do you do that?
I'm so glad we're talking about this. A few things. One, there's cognitive faculties that we have to kind of tease out from the practice, but then we have to see how those live through the attributes we display in our leadership inside the 50-foot round pen. So I've created a framework called the 5 Diamonds Framework. And this framework is about leadership existing across attributes, vision being the most important to begin with. Then comes courage. Then comes ownership. Then equanimity, this idea of emotional balance and composure. And then bricolage. How do we make order out of chaos? How do we remain resourceful? And so as a horseman, if you get inside that 50-foot round pen, you have to display all of that as you're navigating through an animal that can only read the energy off the screen of your mind. You can't speak to this animal, so you're communicating only with your energy. Then it's also important as you're engaging in decision-making to use what I call 6-fold thinking. The best thinking comes not just from reasoning, when we fuse all 6 faculties, reasoning, will, perception, imagination, and intuition. So when you think about making getting to a place of accurate attribution inside the 50-foot round pen to do a great job as a horseman. You're using all of these techniques together. But we need a place to put them to work. We can't just talk about them.
Right.
We actually have to let them live, and it does inside the 50-foot round pen. That's the center point method.
Wow.
And so who comes to, like, when you're doing leadership training, are you doing it for, like, corporate leadership? Are you doing it, like, in the classroom leadership?
Right now, mostly community colleges and universities, also high schools. As a former alternative high school principal, my heart is definitely in that 9 to 12 space in particular. So many transitions happen then.
Yes.
But then also corporate, too, because so many corporate leaders say, you know, I went and got my doctorate. I went and did a master's degree. I went on this conference. I don't feel like I'm improving.
Wow.
And it's because they're talking about a lot, but what are you actually doing? What are you trying to apply to practice? And so I tell folks that improvement requires a continuous practice of a continuous practice, one that we can always go back to so we can measure and see how we're doing. But if we switch up too often and too far and too wide, we make progress, but it's hard to measure how and where because we tried it across 5 or 6 different means. The center point method keeps it centered and keeps it. We're going to focus on it right here in the 50-foot round pen.
I'm hearing it. One, it's going to help so many people, but you're really, when you're saying this, I'm thinking of veterans. Like,
Yes, ma'am.
veterans, they go into something, they want that structure. And when they leave combat or they leave their brothers because they're going back into civilian life, it's hard to find that structure. And the way you just explained everything, it sounds like it's just perfect for someone that is
Try to find
struggling
themselves,
to try to figure out what their place is in this world again.
You know, you saying that makes me think about, first of all, thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you.
And thank you for your love of our veterans. It's
absolutely.
felt. I appreciate
We love
it.
our veterans.
We
We
do.
do.
Thank you. We are lovers of this country, you know, and so it's great to be in the presence of those who also feel that way.
Absolutely.
I think about relationships and I think about purpose when I think about how do we really get at the root of trying to heal when we're struggling through whatever it may be on a mental side. As a veteran myself and as a mentor to other veterans, we have a lot of conversations about what's the key for us moving forward. Because I think about post-traumatic stress, but I also think about post-traumatic growth. And so we have to use the post-traumatic stress to excite the growth. But that requires an activity that helps us see the beauty and what we still have to give.
So we've got PTSD. Now we need to do a PTSG.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, I've
PTSG.
never heard it that way, but I love
I
that
do
concept
too.
because I think people feel so hopeless and helpless when they when they're struggling with PTSD. And to know that there's growth on the other side of it, I think that just gives them hope.
Oh, yeah.
I
Right?
love
There's
that.
no shame, and there's no shame
No,
to feel.
that's the first step is realizing you're not alone.
That's right.
There are other people out there that are walking that same walk with you, and to let someone know that they're guided and they're not being ostracized for how they feel. I mean, dealing with PTSD, I don't think a lot of people realize that it's not just for the veterans; it's for a lot of people. It's for anything in walking life.
Trauma can come in a lot of
It
different
is,
forms.
but I think everything you just said. One, I think we should do is center point.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I would
think
love
that
to
would
do
be
that.
really neat. But also too, just the veterans. Just that's the one thing I keep. And then children. You're not that I know you and I talked on the phone for a little bit. We talked about your heart for the kids, not the 12th grade.
That's right.
And then we also talked about college
Absolutely.
and how this transition going from 9th to 12th grade into trying to. I mean, it's almost like your veterans. They're trying to figure out what their identity is in this world, right?
It's true. It's true. And when I think about it too in 3 tiers, this idea of academic, personal, and social. This is where, as a former teacher and principal, when I would talk to my students and they would struggle, it would be across one or all of those tiers. And these are big questions they're having to answer. Questions like, who am I as a 17-year-old in 2024
Yes.
who's unsure about what's coming next and who has all these dreams and ambitions and not sure how to go about them or, what's right and what's wrong in every context, this idea of judgment. That goes back to those higher faculties we talked about with the center point method, because we can actually tease out this language through the practice and say, where do you find yourself needing to lean? And they'll say, I'm not really intuiting enough. I'm kind of too stuck in my reasoning faculty. But when I say all that to say we have to help across those tiers. If we're only addressing one and leaving out the others, then we're incomplete in our approach. But I think that what I really see is kids have to really trust who they're talking to before they can even open up to be accepting of an opportunity for help from an adult. And so I've always found it's important to just say, look, a lot's going on right now. Maybe we're not going to open up into everything in this moment. Please know I'm here. Never mind the title of principal. As a human being from one to another, I want to make sure that you're going to be successful. When you reach kids at that level, then after weeks or a month or 8, 9 weeks, you get that knock on the door. You know, and that knock on the door is special because you open it up and say, hey, can I talk to you for a second? Yeah, come on and have a seat. And they know they're not in trouble in the principal's office.
We need to
it's a
send
safe place for them.
It is.
Right, it's a safe place.
We need to send Dr. Brown to every
You know?
school in Texas.
And listen,
have
I don't
him
have all the
mentor
answers.
them.
I don't have it all
I know
figured
you
out.
don't,
Trust
but
me.
that was pretty bowed up, really nice.
That
right?
was
that was
great.
simply just perfect the way you said
But
it.
you know, kids right now in this generation of kids, they are having more anxiety and depression than any other, you know, adolescent group previously. And so, you know, I'm thinking, how do we incorporate these principles and help these kids find the strength and the leadership from within so that they can be more confident and not have as much anxiety and realize that they can manage their emotions in a way that's healthy.
You know, it makes me think about right now, I hear so much talk about this idea of safe spaces. And I think that's actually misguided. I think it's about brave spaces.
Yeah.
You know, we aren't always going to be safe. The 50-foot round pen, we see that.
Yeah.
You know, and you stand at the center point and you have this 1,000-pound animal. It knows it's bigger than you.
Yes.
It's going to look at you. It's going to know if you're confident enough to stand at that center point.
Won't it? Yeah.
And then you think about horse psychology. Horses communicate by movement. So if they get you to move your feet, they won. That's why you have to stand firm at that center point. Because if that horse moves into you and you take steps back, it goes, oh, so I'm in charge.
Yes.
But if you stand and make it move its feet, it goes, now what's happening here? Now there's a new dynamic at play. So I bring this up because that kind of really symbolizes how life is. Life is just constantly this flow of left and right, and there's a lot of uncertainty. But the brave spaces concept means we embrace the uncertainty. We're actually excited about it because it gives us a chance to show our true quality. That's a Marine Corps concept, too, that we apply when things get really, really tough. We're like, yes, I'm home. It's supposed to be difficult. I don't wish that it were easier. I wish I were better.
And I think these kids would be so encouraged to know that they have created a brave space, right? Because instead of always trying to search for that safe space, to know that they have what it takes to be in a brave space. I think it would really, it would just be so powerful for them.
Absolutely.
I think that we would give them the ability to regulate their emotions a lot better.
And I wanted to ask y'all, too, what do y'all attribute this to? Just kind of seeing this change and
you know,
mental health needs.
COVID really messed things up.
I do feel, I mean, because, you know, all of us growing up, we didn't ever have a pandemic like that.
That's right.
And where everything just shut down and these kids lost the connection of being with each other and with other adults. I mean, everybody was so isolated. And I think in those really formative developmental years, we really messed with their psyches. You know, and then I also attribute to these cell phones. The cell phones, they're running the same pathways as addiction, and then they're exposing kids to things and topics that they're not developmentally ready to handle. And so, you know, I think we're putting those cell phones are really, really dangerous in their hands, and I feel like they're just getting exposed to way too much. I think all of those things are contributing to a lot more of the anxiety and the depression.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think that I don't even think you could have summed it up any differently. I think that, you know, social media and COVID, I think a lot adults didn't even know how to. I think we're still trying to figure out how to acclimate after dealing with something like that. And then you take that from an adult's perspective into a child's perspective because they're not mature till what, 25.
Well, their brains aren't fully developed
till 25, and so it's like, you know, you think if we're having to process this and we're having a hard time processing, can you imagine what it's like for these kids? And they need to be. We as people need to be outside, enjoying and actively. Now these kids are just home, constantly doing. We were just talking with the last guest that kids aren't even driving anymore.
Wow. They're scared to drive. Driving. Yeah, they're not. Like I remember, like
you died to get your
my
license.
16th birthday. I was like, I was there.
Yeah, you're like, you got your hardship, right?
You did.
It's like we're on the road.
Yeah, and I was driving right. You know, that very first day I could. And these kids, they're 17 and 18, and they haven't even taken driver's ed. They're too scared to get behind the wheel. And he was trying to associate with the fact that they want to be on their phones, and if they're driving, they can't be on their phones.
So they buy Tesla.
See that? See that? And now think about what you just said, and think about what it was like as an alternative high school principal saying, "Guys, no cell phone policy."
Yeah, I don't.
And we had no cell phones in there. Yeah.
Situations that are happening with these schools.
It gets tricky.
It does get tricky because you're like, are you taking away this child's only safety method?
That too.
Because there's a 911 situation and no one can get to their phone.
That's right.
But then they're not learning as much, or they're so distracted. I've seen videos of these kids. I mean, the disrespect that teachers have now, I'm shocked. Like, my kid was a yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. If you didn't say it, privileges were being taken away from you.
Right.
And some people don't agree with that, but I believed in manners, and I believe you send that on to you pass it along to anybody your kids are in front of. And kids now are just, they don't even know how to socialize or act. So how did you handle that as an educator? Like when you've got some of these kids disrespecting your teachers, your staff, what'd you do?
This goes into...
Did you go into Marine mode?
Well, it's funny because going into Marine mode means applying frameworks and tools to assess the situation.
Right. Yeah. That's right.
And I feel like this kind of goes into accurate attribution and attribution error. And this is what I kind of did my doctoral work on, is what do we attribute outcomes to? And do we do it accurately? If we do, we succeed. If we fail, we lose trust, we go the wrong direction, we deploy essential resources in the wrong direction. And so to your point about this, I've seen this happen in so many different places, whether it's East Boston, West Side Detroit. We spent 5 years in Michigan working with Detroit schools.
Wow.
And I can tell you, it's about getting to root cause before you do anything else. What is the real issue here? Is this child not coming to school because they're lazy? Or are they having to take care of grandma and also make sure that the 4-year-old gets to daycare before they catch the bus and get to school? Because I found out in several key situations, just talking to students, asking, hey, you're not in trouble, I want to talk to you. Why are you late? I don't want to talk about it, Dr. Brown, I really don't want to talk about it. Let's talk about it later before you leave, all right? Go to class, blah, blah, blah. End of school, come here. You're not in trouble. What's going on? Why are you late? Man, I got to take care of my grandma. I've got to take care of the baby. I was up at 4. I'm on the bus at 5:40. The bus, sometimes I might get there at 5:50. I have to wait until 6:15 for the next stop. It's an hour-and-a-half ride to school. And I'm doing this on the front and the back end.
God love it. I just hate hearing those stories, but they're out there every day.
Right? And so take this student now, put them in a classroom, and have a teacher say something to them in a tone, with body language, and them not feel respected too, and we start to have a perfect storm. Yes. So it's a bit of a two-way street too. We have to, as educators, remember that these are very different kids, and there's been quite a few white papers that have came out that describe there's different child brain chemistry now compared to children in the 1980s, our generation growing up and all that. And so it's about now how do we meet them where they are? These same principles apply in the 50-foot round pen. Every horse is different too, right? But a lot of times we're jumping on their back too quick to say, get the A, perfect attendance has to be there. And they're going, wait a second, I'm just trying to get my life together for a second. And these are 16-year-olds dealing with very adult-like issues. It doesn't excuse poor behavior because this does happen. And what I do is I attack it head on. And I say, okay, this did occur. Let's, first of all, de-escalate and separate. Tell the teacher, I got your back. I love you. All right, I got your back. I'm not going to let you come in here every single day and be disrespected and have that kind of language going towards you. It wasn't okay. All right. Now let me go talk to the student and let me get that student and their mom and their dad, who, by the way, I believe in good news phone calls. Anytime a student does something good, I've already called the mom or dad at least once or twice to give a good news phone call.
I love that.
So now when they get this phone call, this isn't the first time we've spoken because we have to honor the small wins. If they got a B- or a C-, if they failed the past previous exam, I'm calling right away. Hey, that's a step up. That's a win. Big win, right? So this is the 4th time I'm talking to this parent. 2 of these were good news phone calls. So when they answer it and see my number, it could be good or bad. They don't know. It could go either way here. So they're going to be less likely to skip the call. Now I'm actually getting them to pick up, and we can have real dialogue and get them on the scene immediately that day. This is an urgent matter. We're not going to throw paperwork on him. My goal is not to get him in trouble and put him in some kind of system. I just want this behavior to go away because he's a great kid, love this kid. I don't like what he did today, right? We need to talk about it. And so then the parent will come up and we sit down and we have that conversation, then bring that teacher in and we squash the beef. I think a lot of times what will happen is we'll try to sweep it under the rug or be a little bit passive in how we deal with it, and then it just stirs. And when other students also see that students got away with it and nothing was done, now we just really created a big problem because it was never adequately addressed. But the key was understanding the issue and also hearing that student out. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll just say, okay, here's my timer, 2 minutes. Tell me what happened. Your voice doesn't go higher than mine in this office, but I want to hear what you have to say. 2 minutes, what happened? Your side of the story. And they get 2 minutes to just kind of explain what happened. When that timer goes off, you're done, and then it's my turn. You don't interrupt me.
I'm hitting the timer again. I'm like, I need 2 more minutes.
She would need 2 more minutes. But I love the fact because so many times these kids, their behavior escalates because they don't feel heard.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think just giving
a lot
them
of that comes from home too, though. I mean,
Exactly.
I know that I'm sitting here hearing you talk about a situation which is very real for a lot of young kids or teenagers. They're having to be the adults, or they don't have the support system at home. And we've told these kids, these teachers, and I tell these kids when we're speaking at these schools about suicide prevention, every adult that's in this room, you may not have that support system at home, but you got it here. So at least knowing that you've got one person that you can talk to that's not going to judge you, that's going to love you, that allow us to come here and talk to you about mental health, utilize them. Because a lot of people don't realize, even, friends that hang out with each other, they don't realize the struggles their friends are going through at home. I mean, those friends are their outlet. The teachers are their outlet sometimes. I mean, school was my safe haven. Right. So, you've got to, there's so many different sides that you guys play. The role you play is so vital. And knowing that you were a principal, I mean, I just love everything he's saying. I'm like, everybody needs to implement this everywhere.
But I would love for principals to go through your training, because I think it would be so good for them. I mean, if you're out there and you're listening, sign up for this training, because I think it could really change the atmosphere of your school.
But what do you do? Like, let's say I've got a company, or, Aubrey's known for their horses, their quarter horses. I don't know much about horses. I like to watch rodeos.
But I'm loving listening to you try to talk about it. It's really awesome.
Anyway, okay. But like the NRA is in Aubrey. They've got the National Rodeo Association. I'm thinking, how would you do that? Like, would it be something where, like, if there's a group of people that wanted Dr. Brown to come, how would that work? Tell me how that would work.
So I'm trying to see if I can organize one to do a little bit in the hill country, work to deal with the ranch that's just north of Marble Falls. And the goal would be to get leaders to come. Okay. And we'd bring our horses up and actually go through these actual trainings with them.
Nice.
But the most important part is not just the experiential practice component. It's actually first the academic piece.
Okay.
Because that's how we make the connections and then use them across disciplines. So that's why six-fold thinking, the 5 diamonds frameworks, those are really important to kind of go deeper into. So when we get inside the 50-foot round pen, we know what we're working on, working towards. So when we go back into our other workspaces, we can take those lessons with us. So
can you kind of walk through what a training looks like, and like someone who's coming in for the training, what they experience, what you do,
yes, and
then kind of what they look like on the other side of it?
So here's a great example. I spoke with a physician. He runs a hospital that's in Florida. And one of the things he said was, leadership, something that in medical school we're not going that deep into. We're going so deep into biology, so deep into all these different things. And yeah, we get a few classes that come into customer relations, but we're not going deep into leadership and how do you work with your nurses? How do you work with the janitorial staff if things aren't going well? Because as the person running the hospital, I have to actually confront that individual too and say, hey, things aren't, sanitary. And what about contractors when they come and do work here and they're building our surgeon rooms? How do I interface with them? I don't have courses on this. And so I need a framework to help me make sense of this very complicated system. For a group like that, I would say, great. Let's start to unpack what leadership looks like in the medical context. And let's begin with the 5 diamonds framework. What's your vision, first of all, for what you would like to be able to say at the end of this year? Like, let's just get really concrete and place one single goal at the center point of what you want to see happen in a year. And you'll say, what I'd love to be able to say is that my hospital had, this percentage reduction in this, or retention stayed at here. Okay, great. Now let's go into when it comes to courage, for example. What are you doing to build courage across your organization? And so now we're starting to figure out and tease out across those 5 diamonds, vision, courage, ownership, equanimity, bricolage. How are we working on these things? How does work towards these things live inside the hospital? Because if it's living inside the hospital and oriented towards that goal, that's how we start to bring it to life. And then we can practice how we're working on it by getting out in the 50-foot round pen and living it out for ourselves.
I love this. I'm like,
this is
I want to do this.
Because leadership starts inside of us. I do want to
do this.
Right? It's not about what we say or do. It's about who we really are.
Yeah.
And so we're really trying to develop ourselves to the max extent possible, because once we do that, then we become very, very strong as a unit if we can become cohesive and share a language about leadership too. That's why frameworks can be helpful. We share definitions.
So you're in the ring, and you've walk through what the game plan is. I mean, I'm a simple person, so game plan.
So
right?
round penning is the first exercise.
Okay, game
round
plan.
Penning. And before we even get to round penning, everybody isn't comfortable just walking up to a horse.
No, I'm not.
So
because I know they know I'm nervous.
So I like proximity first. It's funny because Anna was my first student. And it's so
and now she's your wife.
Now she's my
what
wife.
a teacher you are.
That's right. We were married when we first started teaching, but
my story's much better.
That was a good one. I was enjoying that one. Yeah. But it's funny because I had asked her, I'd said, how do you feel about getting so close to a 1,500-pound, 1,200-pound horse? And she said, well, let's get out there and kind of see how it goes. And a big thing about teaching, too, is everybody needs to be able to arrive where they arrive at without any shame. It's all good. We're just out here trying to figure this thing out. And she was fine kind of being behind me a little bit. just walking around a few horses.
Right.
Then we take it up a notch. We walk out into the pasture where there's 40, 50 horses out there.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we're just walking out there among them. Then from there, she's walking next to me as I'm walking my horse. We have a horse named Freedom and a thoroughbred named Liberty. And,
See, I love that too.
Nice.
And,
I love that.
and so we're walking, and she's walking next to me, and then let's step it up. You want to walk them? I'm walking next to you now. Now she's walking them. And so we're just kind of escalating step by step with comfort. Now she's grooming. She's getting into grooming. Okay, let's get into cleaning the hooves a little bit. Now notice, we haven't jumped on the horse's back yet. No riding's occurred yet. And this really is the point, because when it comes to leadership, same principles apply. We have to be careful with our onboarding processes when we bring people in, even when it comes to students. Don't just jump on their back and expect the result right away. So you see this live. Next step after that, we get inside the 50-foot round pen. And this answers your question about what happens out there. So before I go a little bit deep into it, a quick 60 seconds again about that horse psychology component. This is a prey animal. A lot of times we underscore what that means in terms of interactions with humans. A dog's a predator. So when it sees something that it's not familiar with, it wants to go check it out. You'll see the ears perk up. It's curious. It doesn't know what it is, but it wants to kind of go and see, and cat's the same. A horse sees something that it's not familiar with. It wants to turn, and it wants to run the opposite direction as fast as it can until it feels safe. When you put a horse inside of a 50-foot round pen, and you close the door, and you go and you stand at the 50 at that center point, and you ask it to do things that it may or may not want to do, you're having to work in an energy that's requiring a very deep level of mutual shared respect and trust, of nonverbal cues. There's a lot of energetic reading that's happening, and you're having to make adjustments on the fly, navigating through these principles. Now, what happens with round penning is that the horse's most important characteristic is its breath. It's air. That's what's going to keep it mobile and able to get away from a predator. This is why lions are smart. They charge hard at zebras because it creates and induces a fear that causes them to shorten their breath. If the zebra could relax and not get stressed out and just continue to run, the lion would never catch the zebra. The zebra gets caught because the stress causes it to lose its breath. So you see this play out in the 50-foot round pen. The breath starts to kind of get taken away as fatigue sets in with the horse, and it's curious about what's happening. And as the fatigue sets in and this shared energy starts to occur between both the horseman and the horse, you meet in the middle. It's a fascinating thing. I've seen it happen. Well, I'll run, I'll have my horse change directions, and at a certain point, there's a shared curiosity, and he realizes, wait a second, if I walk to Cam, I'm not going to get ran anymore. There's going to be peace and silence. We're just going to stand together at the center point. And the horse figures this out and walks right up to you. And when you do,
I love
you
that.
can rub your horse, and you can walk him around anywhere, and he will follow you. He will follow anywhere you go because he realizes with you there's peace. When I'm out here, I'm having to circle around.
There's also trust.
And there's trust.
Trust. It's to build,
Because he wasn't
build
harming
up,
me.
Yeah, you build up the trust.
Yeah, he wasn't harming me. He wasn't, beating me or whipping me or anything. It's just he was causing me to move my feet, but his feet weren't moving. How was he able to do that? How can he make me move my feet and he's not? So this is where the magic of horsemanship comes in. And now with that relational trust, we've now decreased the distance. Now we can talk about putting saddles on. Now we can talk about other things. But it started with that round penning exercise to decrease the distance. And it was physical, but it was also metaphorical, and it was emotional and relational too.
I love that. Can you tell us about a success story where someone came to you and you worked with them and then they took that back and they transformed their organization?
Honestly, I'm looking at my wife because that's what I would say.
Yeah.
So, no, I'm serious. I asked her too because I saw so much growth and just the confidence she began to have in her vision for how she was going through so many things in her life. And I just saw it enhance, and her getting more decisive. And I said, where's this coming from? I love it. Like, it's just, I see this constant confidence. And she said it's because of the horsemanship. Like, I really, if I can stand in that round pen and Freedom's acting up and I have to really stay relaxed and figure out how to work with him. Mm-hmm. If I can do that, I can do a lot of things, and I really think that just seeing her grow like that, I said, I have to create this methodology, build it out more. It's still, like, again, I don't have every single thing figured out. We're all learners here. But it was really beautiful to see her learn in that way. And I saw real growth as a husband in my wife from doing the methodology. And I hadn't even, gotten into some of the more advanced steps yet and had already seen
So you haven't put her in the pen with Bull?
Not yet, no.
Taking that transformation back when you were as a principal and just seeing parents being able to notice that in their child that they might have been having trouble with, and something that your method did help that child to fall in love with school and to find that level of confidence to be able to take on challenges.
That's right.
Now, I have a question for you, Dr. Brown. So you're talking about this methodology and how you're working it with the what do you call it, the pen? The
50-foot round pen.
50-foot round pen. I know there's a pen in there somewhere. The 50-foot round pen. How do you find yourself like working with fellow cowboys and rodeo people? Like, how have you ever done that to help them try to apply their day-to-day life? And
it's interesting
or is
because
it different because they already know the lingo of a horse?
So
I say lingo,
it's a wonderful, wonderful question. What I would say to that is two things. One, not a ton in that regard. And the reason why is because I'm still kind of focused on the outreach with organizations right now, but I do want to go there.
Right.
Because I'm starting to talk to more and more cowboys. In fact, I just spoke with the gentleman who's the president of the College of the Muskogee Nation up in Oklahoma.
Okay.
Because Anna and I used to do some work with the MHA Nation with Indian reservations in North Dakota. And I bring this up because their horse culture is still very much alive and well.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so working with them is the next step, too. Working with
that.
the Kiowa, working with the Comanche. So in works right now to see if I can figure this part out because I want to bring them into the conversation.
Right.
Interestingly enough, my wife and I got engaged, get this, in Mongolia after a long horseback ride.
Oh, my gosh, that's hilarious.
He planned that, but you didn't.
Her very first ride was in Mongolia. I always wanted to go there because I'm a Genghis Khan history buff. That's also something, is that the Mongolian horse culture, horse people from all over the world really geek out on this stuff.
Okay.
And so I'm trying to bring all of the horse cultures together. The Mapuche from southern Chile. I want to bring the Oroma people of Ethiopia together. I want to get the Kazakhs from Kazakhstan. I want to bring in the Mongols from Mongolia because these are incredible horse cultures. We can learn so much about how to even make this framework more robust by bringing in new methodologies.
So each methodology is different. So each geographical area has a different way of
training
really?
horses. Absolutely. Some will go for more expedited methodology where the horse is going to be on a rope and there'll be sometimes a large obstacle in the middle of the corral and they'll use that to kind of balance the horse's energy, kind of get it a little bit tired before they work with it.
Right.
That's not viewed as the natural horsemanship method. I like to use that methodology. But there's a lot of genius we can tease out from different methodologies across the world, and I'm really curious to see what that leads to.
It's amazing how psychological it is for not only the person training, but also the horse.
Right, and also there's something on the line, and that's what I say about leadership development. We talk a lot about courage, but let's see it live in action. We cannot develop things that we aren't practicing, and so you get out there, whatever methodology you're going to use, you and that horse are together in there. You're responsible together for what's going to occur, and you know that right off, and it's clear, and it's looking into you to see, can I trust us being in here? Am I safe in here with this door closed with you? And just imagine this 1,000-pound animal who doesn't know you looking down with these big brown eyes to see if this is okay. And you have to assert yourself in a way and have the disposition that makes it okay. And that's what I was going to say is that going back to how this all ties into mental health, I feel like leadership, it really helps to give people tools, again, to navigate through complexity. It's an empowering thing because now it changes the conversation going back to a student who is excited to come to school now. Well, the conversations have changed for that student. So now when they come here, because the conversations change, my attitude needs to change. My actions have to change. Maybe my future's going to change now. But if we don't change the conversation, then that's when things
Well, you're giving them a hope, and you're seeing something in them that they don't see in themselves because it's either been taken away from them or they never experienced it ever. So they don't even know what that is to be accepted, loved unconditionally, not judged. Because they're not in control with the situation they're in. And when you give that to them, it just gives them a whole new look in life to be that better person and to almost, I see a lot of times you'll see these individuals that come through, these kids that come through this, they see what you've given them and they're able to push that on to someone else that struggled like they have. So it's a mentorship.
Right.
And they know they can come to you, which is amazing to me.
And we talked about the mental health of kids, but I also feel like we have to look at the mental health of society, adults. I mean, the whole culture has changed, and I don't know if it's just, the effects of the pandemic, but I think that transformation started even before. And I think the pandemic kind of, really accelerated it in a lot of ways, but I feel like we were already seeing a decline in mental health even before the pandemic. And so, I'm thinking about, we do these things for, the methods you talked about within the schools, but how do we get this into our culture, right? Because this is where we got to get people back to feeling confident, connecting with people. People don't connect anymore. And we're just, you see it all over like social media, and all the people just, they say whatever to people. They're rude to people. They're not connecting with people. And how do we get people to start coming back together and being, more of a nation like we want the United States to be, where we're all, instead of fighting each other, we're working together. And it's such a hard thing. But I'm thinking, how do we incorporate this and make people feel more connected?
Mm-hmm. And even just, center point aside, just to your question, I really feel like, at the end of the day, when I think about the mental health crisis for adults, it comes down to purpose again.
Yeah.
I think we're taught a lot of times that we should feel shame if we need others.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to need anybody. You should be fine all by yourself and just be strong and go figure it out. Mm-hmm. We need to be able to have more honest conversations. Mm-hmm. We actually really need each other as a society.
We absolutely do.
Yeah.
We're all in this thing together.
We are.
And if we can't say that out loud and say, oh, okay, so there's a shared onus in what we do about this now, then I think it's going to be hard to find a really long-lasting solution. So I think we have to get there first.
Yeah, and I think what you just said is you hope that we're at that point where we're there before something happens to where we're forced to be there. And no one wants to be forced to be there. But I've often said, if you're not, unfortunately, 9 times out of 10, if we're not forced to do something, we just acclimate to it. We become numb to it. We move on. We don't even process it anymore. It's just emotion we go through. But I've often said, the minute that freedom is taken away from you, there's no more division at that point. Right. That division's gone.
Right.
You're trying to figure out how you can step it up and be there for your brother or your sister. Doesn't matter what color you are. Doesn't matter what religion you are. You just want to be there. And I wish we could get back to that mentality.
Well, people thrive on a sense of community. People thrive with a sense of community. And when they don't have that, things kind of fall apart. Yeah. So I feel like we need good leaders to bring that sense of community in. And that's where we're going back to, is the leadership.
I agree. And I think, too, it's going to come down to how real can we be in our conversations? How deep can we go? Are our feelings going to get in the way of us being able to have the hard talks? We're going to live in the land of nice and pretend like there aren't issues that we need to go over and try to align on? And can we be respectful and tactful as we encounter the differences that we're going to and having the big talks? But I think once we do that and create an alignment and then acknowledging, guess what? Everybody's not going to be aligned on everything.
Right.
And that's fine.
That's okay.
That's what makes it so unique, because you're learning.
Yep. Yeah. And so now if that's the case, perhaps, we need to have communities where there is alignment and communities where there's not. I mean, I think that's a part of the conversation. Nothing needs to be off the table, in my opinion, when it comes to being able to have open dialogue about these types of big issues.
Whatever works to me works for you, and having that mutual respect for whatever it is that you're doing that's helping you walk through that walk every day is powerful. And I don't think that we offer enough acceptance to any group out there. We just kind of, we label it. It's not us. We think it's weird. And I'm like, if it's working for you, let it work for you.
What do you see that's working, would y'all say? What would you say when you think about success stories or things that are working well in the space that you might point to?
Oh my gosh, I think just having people like you on our show. No, I'm serious when I say that. You're giving someone another tool to navigate and to grow. And I think that that's huge, because we see that just destigmatizing mental health in general, like making people realize it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to talk to someone. It's okay to fall backwards. If you move 5 steps forward and you go 10 steps backward, it's okay. It's okay.
We also want to highlight people from all walks of life, because if people on when they're on our show and they can see people that are different from them and say, wow, that's really interesting, or wow, I have a way to connect somehow with that person. I think it's really important just for people to really understand you can come from all walks of life and still be part of a community and still find connectedness. And I think that's really important that we're highlighting those different walks of life on the show. Yeah, we really want to make sure that people feel heard and that people feel recognized, and that, people understand that difference is good. That's right. It really is.
Yeah, I agree, 100%.
Well, this has been amazing, and I just can't imagine the legs that your program can get, and it can run and just totally take off.
Kind of off the ground a little bit, and excited about the growth that's happening so far.
We need to get in
so
connected.
Many areas. Yes, we really
get
need
this thing connected, work together, because man, I could see that being so much fun.
Yeah.
Get me in the ring
100%.
first, though. I'll be hiding behind Anna. Anna. Is it
I
Anna?
love me some
Anna.
horse.
Anna.
I love a horse. I love a good horse.
I mean, I do too, but they know I'm just nervous.
Yeah.
They know I get all nervous, and then they start kicking their little hooves around and doing the little their nose.
That's all in the beginning. Let's say it's just the beginning. Yeah.
I'll be the horse whisperer by the time I'm
go.
done.
I watched Yellowstone. I understand how they
I
train
love
these
Yellowstone
horses.
too, but those are all trained horses. So let me ask you a question, though, back to this, because I'm so curious. Let's say there's a group of people. You get them all in the center at one time, or how does that work?
Nope. So it's a one person at a time who's going through the activity.
Okay.
You'd have multiple round pins in that situation.
So how long is this? Is this like a week deal? Is it a month deal?
You like 5 days.
Okay.
Because 3 really is more of or 2 of the academics, 3 for the prac app. So 2 we go deep into six-fold thinking, the 5 diamonds framework, and then 3 days we go into the actual practical application.
So you actually can give extra time for the people like
We
me
can
that
give
are.
extra
Brandy
time.
may need a
we
little
tailor the
extra
program. We
time.
customize it.
I'm going to be a quick study, but she's going to be, a little extra time over there.
Oh well, it's all about meeting the needs.
That's right. We
All
gotta
about
start
meeting the
somewhere.
needs.
It's all
That's
good.
right. But
Well,
no, so it's one at a time,
One person at a time.
and then 5 days. But y'all, those people that are not in the ring, they're all able to watch the growth and see the changes. Do you
That's
usually
right.
see something happen right away, or is it like? Do you see it? Is it usually day 3, day 2? What is it?
I would say day 1, and we kind of stagger the activities to where those kind of first couple of days, some folks are doing a little bit of six-fold thinking, some into the 5 diamonds framework, because these two kind of superimpose on each other and form a confluence.
Okay.
Because on the one side, we're thinking about how can my mind process accurate attribution when I get inside the 50-foot round pen that has to live in the middle of all this chaos. So how do I kind of center myself and apply what I'm using now that I'm in front of the horses? So I'd say day 1, just kind of even having language,
Okay.
even describe these kind of processes is really important for people. And we see growth just because they have language now to give to what they've been experiencing.
So if any of our listeners want to learn more about your organization, how do they get a hold of you?
Yes.
Check us out at centerpoint-method.com, or you can contact me at Cameron@centerpoint-method.com.
And we'll put all that information too in our
Absolutely.
show link.
And I know you have 2 books out there, and it
Yes.
has something
That's
to do
right.
with
Should
it
be
as well.
releasing by December. We're looking at a
Okay.
December release date. It'll be Attribution Error, and the 5 Diamonds Framework is coming out.
And we're going to get his autograph,
Awesome.
y'all.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. We see this
Thank you
going
so
really
much.
big.
Thank you so
We do
much.
have a this or that. We always have a
do
this or
a
that.
Okay, okay.
We should
Let's
have. Would you take a good one? Thinking about, I didn't even think about the rodeo.
I don't think I got one with a rodeo, but would you this or that? A picnic outdoors by the lake or a fancy restaurant?
Definitely Picnic by the Lake.
I knew it.
I knew it too.
Yeah,
I
that's
knew
me
it
too.
Okay, I love
I know
a
your fancy restaurant.
restaurant.
y'all have no idea what you're dealing with right here. It's a mess. It's a hot mess.
Oh my goodness. Well, we loved having you on, and we
Thank
just
you.
hope that
Yeah.
we
It's
can
great to
get
be here.
some. You just start running with this because it's so needed.
It
I
is
think it's
neat.
going to be.
Thank you.
It's
We'll be his
so
first
unique and
students.
so wonderful. Yeah, and we're going to try to take this course. We're
yeah,
we're
we'd
going
love
to do
to.
it.
Wonderful. And thank you for having me on, and thanks for what you do as well.
Yeah, thank
Really a pleasure to be
Absolutely.
here.
Thank you.
If you or anyone you know is struggling with mental health issues, please reach out to talk to someone you trust. Get connected to a mental health professional who can help you find ways to cope and ultimately feel better. If you are having suicidal or self-harm thoughts or thoughts of hurting another person, please go to the nearest ER, call 911, or contact the National Suicide Hotline at 988. Thank you for tuning in to Mental Perk. We hope our talk today highlighted real people working through real issues based on mental health. Our goal at Mental Perk is to make sure every one of you knows you're worthy. We're in this together.